Hello there everyone, today we're going to have a look at a careless error on a tax return and look at how we think that may have arisen. So let's dive straight in, have a look at this schematic. Start off with an individual. This individual set up a successful business 20 or so years ago. This company here. Now, what happened was, at the time, even though this individual was a founder, he didn't subscribe for shares in this company. So he didn't own any shares. He might have been a director, but he had no equity, had no ownership of this company. Instead, this is what happened. There was a trust arrangement that was set up, an offshore trust, based in somewhere like Guernsey, say, or Gibraltar. And this trust owned a limited company, which was also incorporated offshore, this company here. And this company was the shareholder of the UK company that was set up by this individual 20 odd years ago. Okay? So, this is a line here, overseas, and this overseas trust, which owns an overseas company, owns shares in a UK company. Okay? Now, when you set up a trust has to have beneficiaries who can benefit from the trust, and these beneficiaries, let's just hypothesize and assume that they are the parents of this individual who founded the UK company. So he's got his parents as trustees. Now it just so happens that these parents are what we call non-domiciled. So their lineage, their ancestry was not from the UK, it was somewhere overseas. As a result, they benefit from more favourable tax treatment on all sorts of things like income tax, capital gains tax, inheritance tax. So non-doms have better tax breaks. I must admit, right now, 2023, it's not as good as they used to be, certainly when this thing was set up. Let's just again hypothesize 20 odd years ago. But even so, more significant tax breaks for non-doms then than now, but they're still fairly generous. So there we go. So what does that mean? Well, let's assume that this company, the UK company that this guy founded 20 years ago, pays out dividends. And these dividends get routed to this company owned by this offshore trust and are not taxable. Like I said, perks of being a non-dom. Not taxable on this income. Okay. Now then, let's fast forward many years to maybe 5 or 6 years ago, say, hypothetically speaking. And this company here has come a long way in the 20 years. In fact, it's gone from starting out making losses to being floated on the stock market to being quite successful. And the owners of this company decide to sell the shares. So, when you sell shares, potential capital gains tax liability on whoever's disposed of the shares, who owns the shares. So who does own the shares? Well, in this case, this offshore company owns the shares, which are owned by the trust. So this individual doesn't own any shares. So all of the capital gain arising from this structure here, offloading the shares in this UK company, is tax-free. There's no capital gain. So again, let's just assume though that perhaps this structure that this individual obviously knew about and was party to setting up was maybe not as tax efficient as it could have been. Or let's assume HMRC took a bit of an interest in it and said, hang on a minute. What you've got to realise is that if you set up one of these offshore trusts and you are the settlor and you benefit from the trust, that negates a lot of the tax advantages. In other words, did this individual here, who was based in the UK and presumably is not non-domiciled now, is this individual, did he benefit from this trust arrangement that was set up basically to minimize tax? Because if he did, it kind of negates the advantages of doing this thing in the first place. And the tax burden would shift from here, which is tax-free because it's based offshore, to here and taxable on him. So what might have happened, say if HMRC did have a look at this thing to make them say, hang on a minute, this whole malarkey doesn't work, we're going to hit you, Mr. Founder, for the whole capital gains tax instead of these tax-free bods over here. Well, again, let's just hypothesize. Let's say that there was a loan. Let's say 20 years ago, this guy needed a bit of cash. This offshore structure was flush with cash and they lent him some money. So all of a sudden, the rules around this being tax efficient, that this guy can't benefit, well, hey, maybe he is benefiting now because he's getting a loan from this offshore company owned by this offshore trust. So doesn't that fall foul of the rules of the settlor interested trust regime, which says if you benefit in some way from this, you're going to get taxed rather than these guys? I don't know. Maybe. Again, just theoretical, hypothesizing what could have gone on. Who knows in this little scenario? But I'm just suggesting that HMRC might have said something to do with this is not cut and dry as you might think it is in terms of the separation between you, Mr. Founder, and this offshore arrangement. Therefore, we're going to hit you for the capital gains tax on the disposal of these shares by this structure, which let's just assume the gain was around about 25 million. Now, assuming all the reliefs that are available, had it been all in this guy's name, entrepreneurs relief, various things, let's just say, hypothetically, that comes to about 3.7 million. And then HMRC declare or say, we're going to hit you for a 30% penalty, which is in what they call the careless range. Careless penalty, anything more heinous than that, deliberate error, can be a lot more, can be up to 100%. But in this case, let's just assume that HMRC said, we're going to hit you for 30%. 30% of 3.7 million is about 1.3 million. So this guy ends up with a £5 million tax bill that he settles with HMRC. So again, we're just hypothesizing. We don't really know too much of the ins and outs of the situation. I'm just sort of doing a hypothetical video onto generic offshore arrangements, what can work, what can't work. But I would suggest in this particular case that this guy, when he set this thing up with his parents as beneficiaries, benefited in some way from this arrangement. This could be one of many things that happened, this loan, but it certainly wiped out the whole point of having this offshore arrangement when the onshore guy benefited. Lo and behold, HMRC said, shift the tax burden onto you. So there you go. So just an overview there, folks, on a hypothetical situation using offshore trusts, structures, founder shares, goodness knows what. But hopefully you like this video, and if you do, please do subscribe, and as always, I'll see you soon.